you can split your both microphone inputs and all your HDMI inputs if you want. So the way we're going to split our audio is we go into these settings again under audio, and we're going to do split audio. Now you can split everything at once if you'd like, or you can split them individually. Now why would you want to split the inputs? Well, there's a couple different scenarios that I can see. Let's say you have a clip coming in that you want to play back on your broadcast, but
You're watching Canadian Muslim News on Muslim Network TV from Toronto, Ontario. I'm Samia Sayed. Welcome to the show. Now, coming up is an interview with Brother Muhammad Accord, the CEO of a nonprofit organization advocating for social change, and he's here to speak to us about a recent hate incident in Edmonton. But first, let's take a look at the headlines. Canadian premiers demand higher healthcare funding. Manitoba's riders honor residential school survivors. Chief of Alberta's Human Rights Commission calls Islam not peaceful. Muslim pilgrims perform last Hajj rituals in Mecca. And now the details. Canada's premiers are demanding more funding for the healthcare sector from the federal government in a two-day meeting in Victoria, British Columbia, which convenes today. Canada's 13 provincial and territorial premiers association, known as the Council of the Federation, wants a percentage of healthcare funding up from 22% to 35%. In a media statement, BC Premier John Horgan, who is also the chair of the Council of the Federation this year, said that the pandemic left many people struggling to access healthcare, causing the system to be heavily overloaded. According to the Premier, more funding from the government will take off the load from the choked sector. 50 riders from Manitoba's Sikh Motorcycle Club arranged a biking event yesterday in remembrance of missing Indigenous children and the survivors of the infamous residential schools. The ride, named Every Child Matters, started from Dillon Automotive, located on Pembina Highway, and ended at Brandon Residential School. Baba Dillon, who is the owner of the automotive group and a Sikh Cree, says that the ride helps new immigrants realize the true history of this land. Last year, Dr. Raymond Mason, a residential school survivor and Indigenous activist, was part of the ride. His passing motivated his son Kyle Mason to join the event this year and to advocate for Indigenous rights. Colin May, member of the Alberta Human Rights Commission, has described Islam as, quote, not a peaceful religion misused by radicals, along with other arguable statements in his review for a book by British-Israeli historian Ephraim Karsh. May is the next chief of Alberta's Human Rights Commission and will assume office from July 14th. The commission's main goal is to promote interfaith harmony and eradicate discrimination. May has been a member of the commission since 2019 after the United Conservative Party in Alberta fired NDP-appointed members. The National Council of Canadian Muslims has raised its concern over May's remarks in a press release issued on July 7th. Thousands of Muslims from all over the world performed the final steps of this year's Hajj, a multifaceted act of worship in the holy city of Mecca in Saudi Arabia. The pilgrims threw stones at a symbolic representation of the devil as part of the annual Hajj pilgrimage today. The pilgrimage to Islam's holiest site, the Kaaba in the city of Mecca, is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. A Muslim is required to perform the Hajj at least once if they have the means. Saudi Arabia has limited Hajj for domestic pilgrims in the last 2 years due to the COVID-19 pandemic. A total of 60,000 pilgrims performed the Hajj last year, compared to around 2.5 million in the pre-pandemic year of 2019. That's it for the news. Now, just ahead of the national holiday, the Muslim community was raising concern after members of the Somali Canadian Society of Edmonton received a hateful and racist voicemail. Many criticized the slow and lacking response from the Edmonton police in this incident. Joining us now to speak about this and more is Brother Muhammad Accord, the CEO of Taccalusa Institute, a nonprofit corporation that aims to research, educate, and advocate change in social policy. Welcome to the show, Brother Muhammad. It's great to have you here with us today.
Thank you. I'm very welcome, sister.
Brother Muhammad, it's definitely very frightening to open up your phone and hear hateful messages that seem targeted being repeated at you. How common are incidents like these in Edmonton?
We're not surprised something like this one will happen. We have been having a hateful attack on our community last 10 years. And before that, we have been having concern the level of services that we receive in Edmonton Police Service. So it's not surprised to hear that, but it only every day reinforces the issue that we have, concern that we have with the Edmonton Police Service.
Mm-hmm. Now, I've said before that the police response was slow and lacking, but can you give us some more specifics? What was the police response to this incident?
They didn't even respond. They did not want the community call 911. They didn't even respond that. So that's the level of services that we're receiving from Edmonton Police Service.
Mm-hmm. And I believe they contacted the president of the society afterwards, saying that they would act on it and investigate on what happened. Is this likely to happen, and what will be the outcome of this?
It's just a response after the fact when the president of Canadian Somali Society released, he issued a press release. That's the fact that they respond to that. But before that, there is an incident has been happening when the community call the police. They respond. Sometimes they even sarcastically respond to the victims. When, for example, sisters was attacked in the downtown by somebody, she called 911 and he was humiliated by the person who received her call. The other time is the lady was attacked with a knife, and she called 911, and the police show up midnight. And this happened she called 2:00 in the morning, but they respond at midnight. So that's the level of death. And this is not the only issue. There is almost 70, almost 80 homicide within the community that police could not. Most of them they didn't respond. So you can see the issue as a tree versus the forest. So there is a forest, not individual cases, but there is a bigger picture that shows us what the level that we expect from the Edmonton Police Service.
And I'll touch on that, on how it's a wider problem and how it's very long living. But I want to ask, what effect does this have on the Muslims that live in the area?
It's very frightening. Right now, we are our own. We advise the sisters that display Muslim attire. They have to be vigilant. So we are not expecting as a level of service that the other community, especially the white, receive from the Edmonton Police Services. So we really have a concern, but there's nothing we can do right now.
Mm-hmm. What should the police response have been?
Very slow, indifferent, sometimes sarcasm, indifferent. Sometimes they brutalize our youth. They profile us. They do everything that on the book. And the challenge is we have been raising this issue, but there's no there's no leadership, either from the police or from the city or the police commission. So the police are not responding to any calls that the community. They're not gonna see. They don't see that as shareholders or the citizen of Edmonton. That's how we see that.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the justifications or even excuses that the Edmonton police gave in reaction to this incident is that it was a holiday and that calls for services are prioritized. What do you say in response to this comment?
That's indeed different, because police work overtime. They work during the holidays or even in the midnight. So for us, our expectation is very low. So for us, whether they show up or not, we still show that the level of service we're receiving. But for us, the expectation is very low. So we're not expecting them. They're going to be respond to our calls any sooner, or they care anyway.
Mm-hmm. Now, it was mentioned that the voicemail did not contain a direct threat, though it was filled with hateful messages. What then would you have liked the police to do in response to this situation, especially considering that it was the Somali Muslim community being affected?
I think this call, my organization, whenever I make advocate for the community, I always receive a hate crime calls. But for us, there is an urgency issue than getting hate calls. We already have a hate attack. We have a level of we have a concern our safety and security in our community. Those are more priority than receiving the hate. But the challenge is there were events happening, and that's where the hate crime was targeted. So we will have a concern about what may happen in that event if somebody will attack. So it shows that they didn't show up. So that means if that person threat materialize, the police will never be there for us.
Mm-hmm. Now, you've mentioned that this issue is only a small tree in the forest, and you alluded to how murders were also, or homicides were also part of this issue. Can you expand on that? What does the forest look like?
The forest there look like we have outstanding cases, almost 100. Very few of them were solved, and even those were not properly investigated. We have a hate crime attack on our women, our places of worship. We have hate crimes. We have a profile by the police, street check. The brutality of arbitrary detention of our youth. We have a pipeline from the school to the jails, that they prey on the youth at the high school, and they make a criminal so that they can harass them in the street. So it's a multiple. Also, they did not included or included hiring. The hiring. They're not included in our community, or even included in Muslim community. So it's a variety of things. For example, the police services as well as the police commission are not reflective changes happen in the community. So we're still guests to the system. The system is designed, and also we have a racist-led organization called Police Association, which advocate for not be disciplined by the police who violate the right of our citizen. Mm-hmm. Also, the level of the police reform is outdated. It's a variety of issues that forest to show us we need some reform, and we don't see that is coming. Even we appeal to the province, but it's all about we don't have a political capital that enable us to be seen as a stakeholders of the society.
Exactly. And as you said, the issue ranges back at least 10 years. And again, this whole issue can connect to a forest rather than just a single tree. So if there's so much change that needs to be done to correct the systematic discrimination, to correct all the injustices that's happening right now, or that's being faced by the Somali community in particular, where do you suggest the changes begin?
It began that right now we are looking internally as a community. So that as a Somali community, we have to come together and face where, because in the past we've been engaging with the police, but finally we realized that's not where we're supposed to go put our energy. Right now we have to look as a political. We have to organize and target our energy toward where we can make changes, which is the political. We need a political leadership from the city or the province. So we're looking internally. So right now we are working on those issues. So right now there is two brothers from the community running for seat in two biggest party. We're hoping one of them will be MLA, as you say, MPP in Ontario. Mm-hmm. That's where we are focusing our energy, which means we have to have a political capital in order to make the changes necessary. But shouting at the police won't do it, because police only implement what the political guys tell them to do it. So
and that was very well said. Thank you so much, Brother Mohammed, for joining us today and telling us more about the issue. It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and I'm looking forward, and I'm really appreciate that you're interested in our issue.
Of course. You are watching Canadian Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. That's it from our Toronto studios tonight. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more Canadian Muslim content. Stay safe, and until next time.
Sri Lanka's President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has left the country along with members of his family. It follows months of mass protests over the economic crisis the island is in. His formal resignation is expected to be announced possibly within the next half hour. The BBC understands the president's military jet has landed in Male, the capital of the Maldives. He'd been in hiding after protesters stormed his residence on Saturday. Our South Asia correspondent Rajini Vaidyanathan sends this report from Colombo.
Many Sri Lankans feel that leaving is their only option. In a crisis defined by endless waits, hundreds queue for passports. A chance to leave their troubled homeland in search of something better. Many trying to make it to the Middle East. Like Vasana, who's hoping she'll find work as a cleaner to support her 6-year-old.
How do you feel about wanting to leave Sri Lanka? Your heart is in Sri Lanka. She says she's going because she's struggling to even get food, and that's one of the reasons why she's trying to find work in Kuwait.
Me, I'm planning to go to UK. We don't see any future. So that's basically we want to move from this country. For our kids, not for us.
There's been a lot of pressure for President Rajapaksa to step down. Did you vote for him?
Actually, we vote for him. Yeah. We vote for him and we never expected this. Actually, we thought he's our savior.
And it's not just these crowds who are trying to leave the country. The very people who are blamed for creating this economic crisis, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa and his family members, are also trying to flee the island.
This video is believed to have been recorded at the airport as former Finance Minister Basil Rajapaksa was stopped at immigration. He finally left, said to be heading to America. His brother, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, has now also fled. A ruthless politician, accused of brutality and corruption, part of a family dynasty which has ruled Sri Lanka for decades. once popular, now parodied. Gotabaya Rajapaksa is blamed for the country's economic woes.
He's brought this country to its knees. We have no food to eat. We have no fuel. The basic human necessities are missing. And that's thanks to these people and this one family which has been basically draining all the sources of income that we have.
Lining up for a peek inside the presidential palace. Days after Gotabaya Rajapaksa fled his home, he's now left the country. Regina Vaidyanathan, BBC News, Colombo.
Well, let's talk to Anbarasan Ethirajan, who's live for us in Colombo. And there must be many questions, Anbarasan, about how he was able to leave.
The Sri Lankan Air Force issued a statement a short while ago saying that as an executive president, he had the authority to use a military plane, and which he used to land in the capital of the Maldives, Male, last night. And there are questions how he was allowed to go, but then immigration authorities were saying that as they cannot stop a president, but they can stop anyone else. But now, the protest site behind me, they're full of people. People have been coming since morning after hearing the news that Mr. Rajapaksa has already left the country. As of now, you don't have a president for this country, and various political leaders, including Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, are trying to find out what steps can be taken, how the government can be restored. And the main road along this Gold Face Green, where you see hundreds of people have been coming, and in the last few minutes, we also hear that protesters have gone to the residence of the Prime Minister, and the police were using batons to disperse them. So there could be more violence today in case if the political change is not acceptable to the protesters behind me. And there are also chances of police imposing a curfew, but these needs to be confirmed. But at the moment, the protesters behind me, they are celebrating.
And although he has already left the country, the formal resignation of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa hasn't been received yet, but we are expecting that might be quite soon.
He had announced that he would step down by today, that's Wednesday, after huge crowds stormed his official residence just about 100 meters from where I am standing now. But there was a lot of speculation about whether he submitted this resignation letter or not, because only after he resigns, the Prime Minister can take over as the President. But we still don't know whether the letter has been given or officially when this will be released. On various reports suggest that Mr. Rajapaksa might go to a third country. He may not stay in the Maldives itself. But what brought these people is the issue of cost of living, which is affecting many countries around the world. That started as a protest against escalating prices and the allegations of mismanagement of the economy. Now, that has forced the President Rajapaksa to step down. The previous Prime Minister, his elder brother, was also forced to resign in April. And the current Prime Minister, we don't know how long he is going to stay in power. So this is causing a lot of political instability, making it difficult for the country to ask for international assistance to come out of this crisis.
Anbarasan in a very lively Colombo. Thank you very much, Anbarasan Ethirajan.
When traveling, there's good unexpected and bad unexpected, like food poisoning. When you're ready to travel, TD Insurance could help protect you with 24/7 medical emergency assistance.
Who's in charge in Sri Lanka? The president has fled instead of resigning. The acting leader has imposed a curfew, but protesters want him to step down as well. Is there a way out of the crisis to prevent a power vacuum? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Derry Nabugeda. Sri Lanka's political turmoil is deepening. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa had promised to resign by Wednesday, but instead he's fled to Singapore via the Maldives. The acting president, Ranil Wickremesinghe, has declared a nationwide curfew. The army has been cleared to use force if necessary to maintain order. Sri Lankans say these developments are unacceptable. Protesters have decided to leave the government buildings they've occupied since Saturday, but they're adamant their campaign will continue until both Rajapaksa and Wickremesinghe are out of office.
Kota Ranil don't know how to care to people because of everything lost. Everything lost. All the places fighting because of food, money. That's why too much problem. That's why these people want Kota Ranil go home.